Hello and welcome to the 174th edition of the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast. In Nashville, Tennessee, I'm the professor, Matt Perkins. And a shovel pass across the Harpeth River from me here in the Music City, it's our own offensive coordinator, the coach, Corey Burton.
I like shovel passes. I may not incorporate them much into my game plan for tomorrow night, but it's playoff time here in Tennessee, and it's a good thing that we aren't Overton High School, who actually just got eliminated from the playoffs before it even began.
How did that happen?
Well, they decided it'd be a good idea to get into a brawl during the post-game handshake.
Good times. Great oldies, too.
A man who's more of a lover than a fighter, our third amigo in the second city, a man who is also celebrating Dia de los Muertos by building his own ofrenda. It's our intrepid blogger for Big Ten Accounting, Josh Cook.
Yeah, I teach quite a few students from Mexico or Mexican heritage, and reach out to them, ask them if that was okay for a super pasty white guy from Iowa to do, and they gave me their blessing, as long as it wasn't like stereotypical or culturally insensitive. But it felt good to put my grandpa's picture up, my grandma's picture up, a few other relatives who've passed away here in the last few years, and felt really meaningful. I think I'm going to do it as a tradition from now on.
Yeah, Josh, I saw your post of it, and I was actually very inspired. I think I'm going to join you in that next year.
Well, yeah, I mean, the more you get to know that holiday from Mexico, it's a very beautiful and moving thing to do. And for a kind of a quick crash course, that's also really entertaining. The movie Coco does a nice job of kind of explaining some of the holiday as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have a ton to get here on our Week 10 preview. But before we get to the games, guys, we need to start by talking about everything that has happened over the last 72 hours at the University of Maryland.
What's happened?
For those of you who have been
Maryland, what's going on there?
Living under a rock.
They changed conferences again?
Yeah, well, on Tuesday.
They got new uniforms.
Doesn't that happen every 36 hours for them?
Yeah.
Pretty much. Okay, well, on Tuesday, the Maryland Board of Regents decided to reinstate disgraced coach DJ Durkin to the football program, and amidst a outpouring of hatred and I shouldn't say hatred, an outpouring of disgust on behalf of not only the team, but also the governor of Maryland, one of the senators, and University President Wallace Lowe. On Wednesday, they fired DJ Durkin. So, guys, I'm just going to say that DJ Durkin should have been fired months ago when the reporting first revealed the toxic culture that had been going on at that university. But, Josh, I want to know your thoughts first here on everything that has transpired over, during the past week.
Well, the argument for not firing him immediately right after Jordan McNair's death was you want to try and fire him with cause, so you don't have to pay the big buyout, and you don't want to expose yourself to further liability. So that's why the university went through all that investigation, and they suspended him. The fact that the report claimed that they weren't a toxic environment, and the reason the report came to that conclusion was, well, the coach didn't listen to his players. There was no real open door policy, and by the Webster's dictionary definition, it wasn't toxic. That's BS. That report basically said that Maryland's athletic department was toxic. He should have been fired. The board, I don't know why they chose this hill to die on. I know when you look at a lot of the articles and comments from the people over at Testudo Times, they were playing it up as, hey, these are just snowflakes that want our coach fired. And a lot of fans were circling the wagons and not really talking about Jordan McNair. At the end of the day, if you are the captain of a ship or a head football coach, or you are the principal of a school or the captain in a fire department, things like that, if someone dies on your watch, there's been something that happened incorrectly along the way. And to say, well, it was the strength and conditioning coach, I didn't know what he was doing. That's a terrible excuse. That shows a lack of leadership to begin with. So I'm not going to say Maryland did the right thing, because to do the right thing would have been to have fired him earlier or fired him the second the report came out. So I'm not going to give them a pass and say they eventually got to doing the right thing, so Maryland's all good. Now, Maryland, still a joke in this regard. I think the other thing that helped make this decision is DJ Durkin's record at Maryland, 10-15, 5-13 in conference. It's not like they're giving up Urban Meyer. Not that that gives Ohio State a pass for what Ohio State did. But at the end of the day, I just hope that the McNair family gets just a sliver of, positive thoughts from this, knowing that one of the people primarily responsible for the death of their son is probably not going to be coaching in this sport in the collegiate level ever again.
No, but Josh, like you said, they didn't do the right thing. They only did the right thing when the public pressure got so high that they basically had to. Yeah. And Coach, I mean, you are more involved with a football program, albeit at the high school level, than either of us are. So, we've talked a lot about, toxic culture and that kind of stuff here on the podcast, ever since this story broke. And I'm curious to hear what you have to say, especially about when you read about what the players did and their sort of walkout when it was announced that he would be coming back.
Yeah, I mean, buried in all the extremely egregious details of everything that happened, and first things first, when you hear about these stories, you've got to take the 20% rule. 10% of it is completely over exaggerated bogusness, and the other 10% is you got to take like 20% with a grain of salt, and then anything left in the middle is probably actually what happened. So, even if half of that was true, even if a quarter of that was true, even if like two things were true beyond Jordan McNair's death, it is absolutely horrific. And I think the players did. I think they did the best thing they could have done. As soon as they got news that Durkin was reinstated, he addressed them as a team, and they showed up, and then they walked out. I mean, they skipped practice. And then they made their stance very clear that this ship wasn't going to sail any further with DJ Durkin steering it, and they really left the university no choice but to fire DJ Durkin. And I hate that, the university officials and the people in charge of all these things, it took that action to get it done. I mean, I guess you can say he's no longer there, so mission accomplished. Why dwell on that? But they should have the foresight to understand that even if you're accused of doing a lot of the stuff that he's accused of doing, you created probably one of the worst atmospheres, one of the worst cultures in college football history. I mean, it was downright just straight 100% unadulterated bullying, with some of the stuff that took place. And, you have vomit in a trash can and you're throwing it around a room. You force feed a kid a candy bar while the rest of his team works out. You commit psychological torture by putting nothing but animals mauling each other on the screens. I mean, can you imagine waking up? You're half asleep at 6:30 and you're getting your eggs and bacon and your gravy and your grits and your orange juice. And all of a sudden you look up hoping to see like SportsCenter and you see a lion mauling a gazelle. And it's like that every single day. Constant exposure that's been proven to like give you nightmares and like lead to some sort of mental illness and weird aggression issues. And I don't, just some of the stuff he did was weird and I don't get it. And we look beyond what he does as a football coach, and he's a sick human being,
Mm-hmm.
And
he absolutely is.
And he wasn't anywhere near good enough as a coach to even be a slightly weird individual. But, I mean, that's just like he needs to go beyond just searching for another job. He needs some professional help, honestly.
He needs some serious counseling. Like,
he really does. I mean, all the like the psychological torture type stuff, how does he think in his mind that it's okay? And, leadership 101 should also tell you, if I just scream and scream and scream and cuss out this kid every single day, you think that's going to make him play better? No. It's going to make him tighten up. It's going to make him shut down, and he's not going to want to play for you, or he's going to be so scared of getting screamed at that he's not going to want to take any chances on trying to make the plays for you. So, I mean, the stuff that he did was not only ineffective, but it was morally wrong and psychologically wrong, and just like, come on, man.
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, in some, let's say, parallel universe where DJ Durkin did nothing wrong and was totally innocent of everything and was squeaky clean, and it really was all on the strength and conditioning coach, blah, 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 all that stuff. Sure, in a fair world, he'd be able to come back and coach. But college football ain't fair, and every school that is competing for a player with Maryland is just going to say to those parents, you really want to send your kid to a school where a kid died? So the naivete and the just sheer, like, I don't even know what to call it, like willful blindness to the realities of sports of the Board of Regents of Maryland, thinking they could keep that guy and it wasn't going to affect recruiting. Most of the student body was against this guy coming back. Not that they get any fans at their stadium anyway, but just the athletic department, maybe it was hubris, maybe it was ego, maybe it was thinking, oh, well, who cares? People will move on to the next story come next football season. Who cares? But no, that's not how this world works.
No, not at all.
So I just don't get why, even in a bizarro situation where you can say DJ Durkin has his hands clean, why would you bring him back?
And DJ Durkin's still the guy that hired the strength and conditioning coach. And
he's liable for everybody underneath him.
And I don't know where the phrase comes from, but the fish rots from the head, man.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not going to try and put something out there like a conspiracy theory to think that this is going to happen in other places. But you look at where Durkin's coached, and one thing that I find mildly interesting is his former boss, Jim Harbaugh, has been said of, well, this is a guy that kind of rubs his bosses the wrong way after a few years. And this is a guy who doesn't want his players eating chicken because he thinks it's a weak bird and will make them weaker. It kind of makes me wonder, what the hell is going on in his head? And if Michigan wasn't winning almost 10 games a year and sitting in the top 10 right now of the polls, I wonder if those players would be enjoying their season as much doing whatever in the world Harbaugh does.
Yeah, I mean, Harbaugh's a weird guy. Harbaugh is, I would say, a little bit more eccentric than he is, a bully or has this kind of attitude. But he is also, he is known to be as Tony Kornheiser has called him many times, a berserker. And I think that some of that has definitely rubbed off on Durkin. But Durkin took it to an extreme that I don't think anyone could have. I don't think anyone could have anticipated, but that is clearly an unhealthy way to live and to coach and to, raise young men. So I'm glad that he is gone, and hopefully he will not be coming back anywhere anytime soon.
I would say what he did is the second worst college football scandal that I can think of, second only to Penn State's systemic covering up of Jerry Sandusky. And I would put it as the third worst collegiate sports department overall with Larry Nassar and what Michigan State did.
Yeah, and I think you could throw Baylor up there as well.
Baylor's is weird because it's not specific to the athletic department. It's just an entire university-wide shame.
But Baylor is still manifested in the athletic department more so than anywhere else on campus.
That's true.
And there was still, the not just the cover up, but the constant use of Christianity to say, "Oh no, we are moral people," with Baylor. But we covered that ad nauseum last year.
Yeah.
So okay, well, with that out of the way,
let's get to some more fun stuff.
Let's get to the fun stuff. So we'll start off with some quick slant, Josh. And I know that you're headed down to West Lafayette this weekend.
I am headed to West Lafayette, and it's been a little bit since I've been to West Lafayette. So I was just, reintroducing myself to some stuff about Ross-Ade Stadium, double-check their tailgating policy. And I just wanted to read this to you guys verbatim. This is from the Purdue website. All flames must be in an enclosed container above ground. Hot coals should be extinguished with water and put into a fireproof container before putting in trash. No charcoal or wood fires of any kind allowed. Only gas grills allowed. Are you guys as confused about that as I was?
Yeah. How are you going to put out? How are you putting out a gas grill and putting in? I don't get that.
Well, the nice thing is they have an 800 number to call. I called it. They left out a little bit of information. Charcoal grills are allowed in hardtop parking on pavement, paved lots. If you're in a grassy area, you can only have a gas grill. It doesn't matter too much because I can just take my gas grill and then I'm covered either way. But I was reading that and I was thoroughly confused. But the good people at the Purdue Athletic Department cleared it up when I called them, and I'm excited to see Big Ass Drum again.
All right. Yeah. Well, right before we started recording, we heard the old Boilermaker train run by my house. So it must be, they know you're coming as well.
Yeah.
Coach, I know that the hated Gators, they lost your dogs last week, and they get to host Drew Lock and Mizzou this weekend.
Yes. They're looking for a rebound here. If they want to have a slight chance of reaching the SEC title game, this is a must-win. Not that last week wasn't a must-win, but, Dan Mullen's just trying to pick up the pieces from what Georgia did to him systemically over the course of that ball game. Just physically dominated Florida, and you could see it wear him down. It was close, but Florida never really had control of that game. So they they got to overcome 3 turnovers. They got to clean some stuff up. Felipe Franks played the worst game of the season in Jacksonville, and the run game's always been strong. The defense, pass rush has always been strong, but both of those things were stymied a week ago, so they got to find some answers there. Missouri also got to find some offense. They had a tough go against Kentucky. They had them on the ropes. They let them off the ropes, and Kentucky knocked them out. So Drew Lock is going to have to simply put, he's going to have to play better. He was 15 of 27 last week for 165 yards, didn't throw a single touchdown against Kentucky. They just had no answers for an elite defensive front from the Wildcats. So, they'll have to kind of try to figure out how to block Florida because it doesn't get any easier here. Todd Grantham is a guy that likes to blitz and likes to blitz heavy on third downs. He'll bring a heavy blitz package and play, zone coverage behind it. And there you go with the famous third and Grantham. Or the infamous, depending on who you are. For Florida, if they want to win this game, they've just got to clean up some of their mistakes. Felipe Franks threw one really bad interception against Georgia last week, where he just threw it straight to Tyreek McGee. There was no trying to figure out what he was doing. It was just a horrendous throw. He's got to take better care of the ball. He gave up a fumble at the 1 yard line. Luckily for the Gators, that only cost them 3 points and not 7. And so, that's a story in and of itself. But, and then they just, obviously they got to get after Drew Lock and put pressure on him. That's what Kentucky did. They shut down the run game and they got after Drew Lock. And if Florida wants to have any success, they're going to have to keep Drew Lock on his heels and eventually on his back some a little bit as well. So looking to be, kind of an interesting game because it could go so many different directions. Missouri could completely blow them out. Florida could completely blow out Missouri, or, one of them could win in a really tight overtime game. I think it's going to either be like overtime or one team's going to blow out the other. And, I think that, with Missouri as strong as they are offensively and the weapons they have around, they just haven't seemed to put it together yet. So I have a hard time picking them to win this game. I think Florida's going to come out ahead. And personally, I think Florida's going to roll in this game because I think Missouri's just kind of down and out now, and you're going to kind of see what you're going to kind of see this Missouri team kind of fold up. That it looks like they're doing that as of now. So,
yeah, I mean, I think we saw Drew Lock probably have his worst game in the last 2 seasons last week against Kentucky. So I'm interested to see how he bounces back again against that Todd Grantham defense. But for my first slant, I wanted to preview a game that we thought coming into the season was going to be the game of the year in the Pac-12, and that's between Stanford and Washington. Unfortunately for both teams, the season has not quite gone as planned. Both of these teams already have 2 conference losses and 3 losses in total on the season and are well behind Washington State for the race in the Pac-12 North. In some ways, these teams have been mirror images of each other. The marquee offensive players on both sides, Bryce Love for Stanford, Jake Browning for Washington, have been underwhelming to say the least. I mean, the Cardinal rank 126th in the nation in rushing offense. Who would have anticipated that coming into the season? Also, that's typically stout Stanford defense now ranks 80th in the country in yards allowed. On the flip side, Washington has not been able to pressure the passer at all. They're 118th in the nation in sacks. Washington still has a path to the Pac-12 title game. With a victory here, they're going to have to run the table and beat Washington State in the Apple Cup in order to make it. And they would like to do that and ruin probably the Pac-12's only chance of getting a team into the playoff in those Cougars. But their margin is slim, to say the least, to do that. And while I think that they will end up winning this game because Stanford's offensive line just has not gelled this season at all, Bryce Love is just getting stymied every time he seems to touch the ball. It'll probably be a slugfest, low-scoring game. But, both of these, one of these teams is going to come out of this game with 4 losses on the season. And I think, we all anticipated both of these teams probably having double-digit victories. So that's pretty shocking. But elsewhere, Josh, a couple other interesting Group of 5 games.
Yeah, I'll start with the low-light one first. 0-8, including a loss to Northern Arizona, 30-10 to open the season. 0-8, UTEP. They hit the road, crossed the state over to Rice, who won their opener against Prairie View A&M and have dropped 8 straight. So we've got 1-16 combined in this game. Why do I care? Why am I highlighting it? Well, first-year coaches on both sides of the sidelines. Dana Dimmel over there at UTEP inherited a just truly awful offensive team. He hasn't had great success as a head coach, 30-47 in his career. Obviously, the 8 straight losses here at UTEP haven't helped that record. But he coached at Kansas State for 8 years, did offense there, had some success with Arizona on different offensive positions there. So the Miners were really hoping that he could turn their offense around. Hasn't quite happened yet. That's going to be a long rebuild. And over at Rice, they have Mike Bloomgren coming in as the first-year coach. This is his first head coaching job anywhere, so he's still learning the ropes. He did some work with Stanford. That was his last stop. Part of that had some cup of coffees in different positions in the NFL as a coach. So these are 2 guys that just are trying to have really tough rebuilds. West Texas, not a hotbed of recruiting activity, even though El Paso's kind of a big city. It's just not a whole lot of talent over there that people want to make that trip across the state from the hotbeds of Dallas and stuff. And then Rice is basically an Ivy League school in the middle of Texas, and it's the smallest school that still plays FBS football. So tough rebuilds there. Hopefully one gets a nice victory this weekend to kind of.
One of them has to get a victory this weekend.
I know, but I mean, I'm hoping the victory is a springboard for bigger and better things. But the highlight for the Group of Five, a game that I'm really intrigued about, is this amazing Utah State offense getting on the long flight. They're heading out to the Big Island. They're going to Hawaii. I know our lovable Warriors have dropped 3 straight games, but it's been to some good teams, including Fresno State most recently. They're 6-4. They're still going to a bowl game. Hawaii's still a dangerous team when that offense gets going. So for me, this is a bit of a measuring stick game for Utah State, a team that just entered the poll but hasn't really played anyone outside of that BYU game, although BYU is turning out to not be as good as we had thought. But very intriguing game in the Mountain West.
Absolutely. Coach, back down in the SEC, we got another good one, Texas A&M and Auburn.
Yes, it's a very interesting matchup because preseason you would see this and circle on your calendar and say, "Ooh, this is going to be the CBS 230 matchup," and it's going to be one of those weird doubleheaders where you have 2 great SEC West matchups with LSU and Auburn and Texas A&M, LSU Alabama, Texas A&M Auburn, and say, "Man, the SEC slate's really good," but instead we get the head scratcher of, well, Georgia Kentucky is this SEC's game of the week because of the implications for the division, and this is a game where you're hoping one of the 2 teams can pull out of their slump. So for Texas A&M, I mean, how do they come back? How do they bounce back? We discussed a little bit their game last week against the 28-13 loss at the hands of Mississippi State. Apparently the prescription was more cowbell for Mississippi State, and the Aggies couldn't handle that. So how do they bounce back? Well, they were on a 3-game win streak, so they were doing something right. Kellen Mond just needs to get back doing what he does. And he needs balance within the offense. And when I say balance, I mean true balance, as in let's get everybody involved. Let's spread the ball around.
We're talking about Mike Leach balance, not 50.
We're talking about Mike Leach balance, because if you're 50-50, well, 50% of that is stupid. Something like that is what he said. But Travion Williams needs to be heavily involved in this. They have to get some semblance of a run game if they're going to do anything. Also, their offense is the 4th most productive team in the SEC in yards per game. They're only they're 7th in scoring. So some of that discrepancy has to kind of change. They're racking a bunch of yards, but as we say in the dieting world, empty calories. Well, these are empty yards because they're not converting them into significant points. So they're kind of middle of the pack scoring wise, but they're top in yards per game. So something's got to give. And if they, and I know this kind of sounds like, well, no kidding, they're John Madden, but if they want to win this game, they got to start putting the daggone ball in the end zone. And they got to start scoring some touchdowns, and once they really kind of start scoring touchdowns,
boom, got to score some points.
Well, boom, you got to score more points than the other team, but still, like they just gotta, and that just that'll come with being able to finish drives. If they can finish drives, they will be able to really just get some momentum. For Auburn, they've had probably one of the most disappointing seasons in the last 5 years of any team in the SEC, where the expectations were so incredibly high coming in because they were in the national title discussion a year ago, at this time, actually, a year ago. And for them to be 2-3 in conference, nothing really to play for except, one of the Florida Bowls that takes that'll match them up with like Rutgers. For Auburn, they've got to figure out a way to take some heat off of their poor performance this year. And Gus Malzahn is just, again, he's he's got to find a run game. Jatarvius Whitlow is somebody that's kind of emerged for them. He's a redshirt freshman, so that's good. He's dealing with some shoulder. He's dealing with some shoulder and leg injuries. He's a little bit beat up, but he's only 374 yards away from 1,000. That'll give him a 1,000-yard rusher for the 10th consecutive year. So you think they're going to be doing that? But what worries me about them is their offensive line. It's not good enough. They're not good enough. Especially they're not good enough to be one-dimensional. And if they got to rely on Jarrett Stidham to sit back there and pick teams apart, that ain't happening. Because he's not going to have time to pick people apart, and he's just not that type of quarterback. He's the type of quarterback that thrives on quick reads, RPOs, and tempo. And if they want to do that, Malzahn's got to stop being so stubborn and do what works, which is a good run game and tempo for his quarterback and offensive unit. Defensive line, they need to feast, and they need to feast on Kellen Mond. If Auburn's defense goes as this defensive line goes, that is the heartbeat of that defense. And if they're feasting, the whole defense is flying around. If they're not, then it's going to be a long, long day. And nothing gets that defense going more on the plains than a good old-fashioned takeaway. And if they can get multiple takeaways, this could be a rough night for Texas A&M. So it'll be an interesting game to watch. It's an 11 o'clock game, so it'll get the day started right quick. So I'm thinking A&M's going to bounce back and they're going to win this game, but it's not going to be easy. Auburn's going to come out fired up, but I think they're going to make some key mistakes in the second half, and A&M's going to take advantage, and they're going to finally cash in.
All right. Well, for my final slant, I'm going to continue with my new tradition of talking about Syracuse on every single show. And this weekend, the Orange are heading down to Winston-Salem to take on Wake Forest. There should be some serious points in this one. Syracuse, 9th in the nation in scoring offense. They're at over 42 points a game. Damon Deeks, 124th nationally in total defense. They're giving up about 500 yards a game. But don't sleep on Dave Clawson's bunch. They are very disciplined. They have garnered the second fewest number of penalties in the entire country this year, and they lead the ACC in total first downs. And given the fact that Syracuse defense is not exactly a brick wall, I would not be surprised at all if show favorite Greg Dortch goes off on this one against a secondary that gave up nearly 500 passing yards last week to NC State. I think that the Orange are going to be able to pull this one out, but I think it's going to be very, very close. So, gentlemen, time to take out your number 2 pencils, grab your blue books. It is time for tonight's pop quiz. So as we are recording here on Thursday night, UCF is currently up 49-40 on Temple with about 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Taj McGowan just scored a rushing touchdown for the Golden Knights. And should they hold on to win this one, they will become the 20th team since the end of World War II to have a winning streak of at least 21 games. So, gentlemen, your job is to name those 19 other teams that have had a winning streak of at least 21 games. And just a little hint, there are a couple of teams that have done this more than once, and one of the teams is no longer an FBS program. Gentlemen, you'll get 1 point for a correct answer, and a second point if you can name the year or years that they accomplished this feat. You don't have to name every single season, just one of the seasons in the streak. Josh, I will start with you.
All right. Well, I'm going to start with the longest winning streak, and that is Oklahoma in the mid-50s. I would say 1955 covers their streak, and it's the longest in football. It's about 45 games.
47 games. That is correct. You also get the second point for name of the year. That happened from October of 53 to November of 57. Oklahoma also had a 28-game win streak in the mid-70s as well. So, Coach, you are up next.
All right. I'm going to go with another mid 20th century power. And I'm going to say the Nebraska Cornhuskers.
Nebraska is correct. They have 3 such streaks. Do you want to guess a year?
I'm going to guess 1983 was part of one of their streaks.
Well done, Coach. They had a 22-game win streak from 82 through 83. Also did it from 70 to 72. And their longest one of 26 games was from 94 to 96.
Nice.
Josh.
All right. Well, a team that I fondly remember, they lost very early in 2000, then ran the table. Probably should have gone to the BCS title game. They didn't get to. 01 was their revenge tour. They ran the table. And then 02, they should have won a second straight title, but they lost on a phantom PI. And that's the Canes with Larry Coker.
That is correct, Josh. From 2000 to 2002, they had the third longest streak in history. They won 34 consecutive games. They also had a streak from 90 to 92 where they won 29 in a row.
I believe that would have been Dennis Erickson's teams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was my next guess there, Chief. Okay, so well, I'm gonna say I'm gonna go with the other in-state power around the same time, probably preceded the Miami run and concluded with the wire-to-wire national championship season. I think bled into the 2000 season a little bit up until, I guess, the Miami game. And that would be the Florida State Seminoles.
Florida State is correct.
Nice.
What year did you say, Coach?
I said part of it was in 1999 when they went wire to wire, undefeated. So I would say like 98, 99, part of 2000.
Florida State is correct, but the two streaks that they did so were from 2012 through 2014 with famous Jameis, and actually that is their only streak. The other Florida State team that you're talking about only won 17 in a row.
Oh, okay.
Only. We could wish to be so lucky.
Josh.
I'm going to go with one of the great overlooked runs probably in college football. I think it gets a little underrated because it happened as an independent, and then it was so good they got to join the Big Ten. That's Duffy Doherty's early 1950s Michigan State team. I think it might have been right in 1950.
Yeah, 1950 to 1953, Michigan State won 28 in a row.
Oh. Yeah. Duffy Doherty was the second of two coaches that was instrumental in getting Sparty going.
Yep, Coach.
Ooh, okay. I'm going to say I'm sure Alabama's done it at least once.
That's correct. They have.
Bear Bryant's era. I'm going to say 1965 is one of the years.
Alabama. Alabama has had three such streaks. Not in that era though, Coach.
They had the early 90s one.
Yep, 91 to 93. Also 78.
They had the guy right after Bear that was probably like 76?
78.
Stalling.
78 to 80. And 2015, 2016, they won 26 in a row.
Nice one. Yeah. Nice one. Coach.
Well done. And that was right before they finally lost to Clemson in the national title game. All right. Josh, you are up. You are leading 6-4.
All right. Well, I cannot believe it hasn't been said yet, but those amazing Pete Carroll teams with Southern Cal, they won a boatload of games.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I think it might have been snapped in the Vince Young game, so I'm going to say 05.
Yep, that's right. 2003 to 2005, won 34 in a row. That is tied with Miami for the third longest streak of all time.
Nice.
Oh, okay. Wow. All right. I'm going to say the Buckeyes.
The Buckeyes. Ohio State is correct. What year?
1974.
Ooh, Archie Griffin. Not quite. They had two such streaks, one from 2014 to 2015 and one from 2009 to 2012 to 2013.
Nice.
Josh.
All right. Well, this is just a program that is consistently good, especially post-war years. So I'm going to go with Notre Dame. And I think that our friend Lou Holtz did it in the late 80s. Do I need to be more specific?
Yeah. Give me a year.
I'll go as late as possible in the 80s because I think they won the title in 1989.
They did. That is correct. 88 to 89, they won 23 in a row, and 46 to 48, they won 21 in a row.
Is that era?
I believe that is Ara Parsegan. Yes. Coach, you are up.
Rudy. No. Sorry, you caught me off guard there. Oh, jeez. Okay. So, I'm gonna say my Bulldogs. Right around 1980, they went 12-0.
They did, but they only won 15 in a row from 79 to 81.
Ooh.
And their longest streak was from 45 to 47, where they won 17 in a row, but not quite the threshold needed for this one. Coach, that is your first strike. Josh, you're leading 10-5.
All right. Well, I am going to go with the deceptive national champions. We always forget about them. About the 1984-85 season, those Brigham Young Cougars, they had a Heisman Trophy winner, and they won a national title. It happened with the poll system. I'm sorry, Central Florida.
That is correct. 83 to 85, they won 25 in a row.
See, I'm good with the trivia questions. Coach always beats me on the stats one. But when we can do like random useless information from the 60s and 70s, that's where I really get to shine.
That's your wheelhouse, Josh.
That's like a grooved 85-mile-an-hour fastball about belt high.
Yeah. Well, you know, the next question for our next show is probably going to be like, who are the top 15 defensive teams that have only allowed like 10.5 points or less per game? And I will guess Ohio State and then not know any other answers. Well,
that just dominates you. So I'm going to go on a limb here, okay? And I'm going to say the Boise State Broncos.
Boise State Broncos would be an excellent choice. Do you want to give me a year?
Yeah. 2006.
Boiler up, indeed. Boise State is correct. 2006, not quite. They've done it twice. 24 in a row from 2009 to 2010, and 22 in a row from 2003 to 2004.
Wow.
Oh.
Josh.
All right. Well, I don't know the exact year off the top of my head, but I got to imagine one of Joe Paterno's teams had to have accomplished this at Penn State.
You want to give me a year?
They're pretty damn good in the 80s, so I'll say 1984 or 83.
Penn State's correct, but their only streak that covers this would be their 23-game win streak from 68 through 70.
I'm curious how many like near 20-game winning streaks they had in their career.
They had one of 20. Remember, we need 21 for this one. They had one of 20 from 93 to 95, a 19er from 77 to 78, a 15er from 70 to 71.
Yeah. Did you say a niner?
Is there a niner in there?
Is there a niner in there somewhere?
Coach.
I'm watching this god-awful commercial for some pharmaceutical company, and they're just showing people playing slow-pitch softball, and it's really bad. Like, this dude's like doing some like Macarena dance. It's really kind of funny. I'm just stalling so I can think of my next guest, if you couldn't tell. So I'm going to go with the Florida Gators.
Flo Rida. That is correct. You want to give me a year?
Yes, 1996 is one of them, and then the other one would be from 2008 through 2010.
Well, you gave me two. It was only one of them, but I will give you credit for that one. 2008 through 2009, they won 22 in a row. All right, Josh, you were up 13-8.
Matt, when you said post World War II,
yes.
Does that mean the streak can have started during World War II?
It had to have started in 1945 or later.
World War II, United States.
Army's streak in 1945 doesn't count?
No, it does not.
It should. We beat the Germans and the Japanese.
Army streaks that started before 40. If you want to start in 45, they won 16 in a row, 45 to 46. But But
Well, is that a strike or is that a point of clarification question?
that's a point of clarification. I'll give it to you.
Okay.
I'm a very lenient grader, if you guys haven't noticed.
I have noticed that. So this is a little bit of this is a little bit of weird Big Ten football history, but leading up to World War II, Michigan was a dog crap program, and Ann Arbor had flights.
I was gonna say in the post, what was it? Not Fielding Yost, post Fielding Yost era.
Yeah, they had a lull. They had a lull in the 30s and 40s. But Ann Arbor had a flight school, and actually a lot of some of the best players in the Big Ten would have like 2 years at Iowa or Wisconsin or Minnesota.
Like Hirsch.
And they would transfer to Michigan because Michigan had a flight school. And in the late 40s, like 1948 or thereabouts, Michigan got good again and has stayed good since World War II, but they had a very long streak in the late 40s.
That is correct. 25 in a row from 46 through 49.
It's a weird bit of Big Ten history. I'm curious if that flight school had not been in Michigan, where would that program be today?
Who knows? Coach, you are up.
All right. Here's a point of clarification question. If they are currently an FBS team, but they haven't been an FBS team for long,
this only counts as a streak as an FBS program.
Okay, so my next guess of Georgia Southern would not be valid.
That is correct.
Okay. Point taken. So I'm gonna say I'm not going to say LSU because they always tend to lose a game. But I'm going to go on a limb and say the Tennessee Volunteers had to have done it at some point under Johnny Majors or at some point during Phil Fulmer's run.
So close, Coach. It's your second strike. They won 20 in a row from 50 to 51 under Johnny Majors, not 21. Sorry, Coach. That's your second strike. Josh, you're up 15-8 with, I think, 6 schools left.
Okay. Well.
Hey, I'll give you a hint.
Yeah.
It's probably not Rutgers.
It's a losing streak question for Rutgers.
Oh.
Well, I kind of have exhausted the teams that I was really confident in, but kind of thinking of Michigan State and these sleeper teams that had really good streaks that we don't remember about. In the late 90s, UCLA was super good and just could never quite win a national title, but they won a boatload of games.
That's a good guess, but they, like that Tennessee team, only won 20 in a row and not 21, Josh. From 97 to 98. First strike. Coach, you're up.
All right, for my third strike, I'm going to go down swinging, and I'm going to go down swinging hard. One of the teams is no longer an FBS program. That would have to be the Idaho Vandals, right?
Oh, that's actually not a bad guess. But unfortunately not, Coach. That is going to be your third strike. You are out. Josh, you have won. Do you have any else off the top of the head before I give you the rest?
Well, some of that I jotted down that I wasn't entirely sure about. The Washington team in the early 90s was really good.
That is correct. They won 22 in a row.
Believe it or not, the Razorbacks, I know we like to bury the lead, but they played in something we like to call the game of the century in the mid-60s.
63 to 65, they won 22 in a row.
They had a run. And I was trying to think about what in the world team you had given the hint about. And I had settled on a couple Ivy programs.
That would be a good guess.
Because the Ivy programs were so good. And when I think of Ivy football, I think of Harvard, I think of Yale, I think of Penn, and I think of Princeton. Was it any of those four?
Yes.
Well, that didn't narrow it down.
It is one of those four.
It's Harvard.
It's one of those four?
It is one of those four.
Hey, you know how like in horse you get your rebuttal shot? There it goes. Harvard.
No.
Damn it.
It's not Harvard? Well, I mean,
You got a 1 in 3 shot, Josh.
Yale.
No, it's Princeton from 49 to 52. Other team.
And then another potential guess is we like to joke that the Golden Gophers were only good like way back before World War II, but they actually did have a run after World War II with Bernie Bierman. So the Gophers could have potentially done it.
Goldie Gopher does not have a winning streak that is of more than 15. So
what about Kansas? Like when they had Gale Sayers or like John Riggins?
Nope. Sorry, the teams you guys missed.
No. Minnesota has a streak longer than 15. It just might not be after World War II.
Yes, this is. I'm sorry, after World War II. Okay.
Yeah.
So teams you guys missed. Texas, 68-70.
Oh, nice.
They won 30 in a row. Toledo, from 69 to 71, won 35 in a row. That is the second longest streak of all time.
Jeez,
very shocked.
Was on the MAC back.
No one said Nebraska.
Coach said Nebraska.
That was my first guess.
Oh, well, then he got credit for it. I mean, he would have gotten. I did not tick that off on my list as having been.
That was the first one I said.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you got credit for it. I just didn't tick it off on my list as having said. Josh mentioned the only other one we're missing then is Arizona State.
I demand a recount.
69 to 71. They won 21 in a row.
Who's no longer an FBS program?
Princeton.
Oh yeah.
So
was Arizona State considered playing the highest level of football in '69?
Yes, they were.
I assume they were in like the Rocky Mountain Conference.
Nope. Sorry. They no, that one does count according to collegefootballreference.com. So
well, I will say shout out to the Iowa Hawkeyes. They had a winning streak of, I don't know, pretty close to 20 games back in the 1920s. So that's why I did not guess them, because I knew it was pre-World War II. But Iowa is somewhere on the longest winning streak list.
All right. Well done, gentlemen. Well,
where was Georgia Tech's? What was Georgia Tech's longest?
Georgia Tech's longest was 18, from 51 to 53.
Okay. And because they had a good run in the early 90s.
Yes, they did. Wow. Yes, they did. So, okay.
Tulane's 98 team probably wasn't padded enough with 99 or 97.
They were not.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well done, guys. Let's finally hit some deep roots. And what is likely the most anticipated regular season matchup of the season is taking place in Baton Rouge this weekend. Number 1, Alabama taking on number 3, LSU. Coach, ton of future NFL talent going to be on the field in this one. Matchup I'm most curious about is Tigers DBs against Alabama's receivers, specifically Greedy Williams against Jerry Jeudy. Coach, do you think that LSU is going to try to match up man-to-man, or are they going to be playing a little bit more zone in this one?
Oh, they're definitely going to match up man-to-man in this. Yeah, that's kind of what they prefer. So, yeah, they're going to match up man-to-man, and they're going to bring pressure. They're not going to let Tua Tagovailoa sit back there and pick them apart. So, they got some of the best DBs in the country. Lock them down, man. That's what I would do.
All right. Well, what else are you going to be looking for in this one?
I'm going to be looking at the quarterback battle with Tagovailoa and Burrow. Burrow has shown that he's not scared of big games and big moments, and he's a guy that can hang in there and make plays when needed. I'm going to look at the run game. Brissett versus Najee Harris or Josh Jacobs or whoever Bama decides to roll out there. Which running game can get going? Which quarterback can kind of sift through the garbage and make a good play here and there. It's going to be a sloppy game. You're not going to see the same kind of Alabama offense that you've been accustomed to all year long, with Tagovailoa just darting around and making plays and launching the ball downfield, and Jeudy making some ridiculous SportsCenter top 10 grab, and everyone's going, "Oh man, have you seen Bama?" It's not going to be like that. It's going to be a classic Alabama LSU slugfest. Quarterbacks are going to have the dirtiest uniforms that they've ever had. Burrow's going to take his fair share of hits. Tagovailoa is going to take his share of hits. And, for LSU, if they want a chance at this game, they have got to grind this thing down to a nub. LSU is at best when they are death by field goal. That's kind of what they do. They kind of just grind the game to a screeching halt. and make you play sloppy. And that's what they do. That's how they win. That's how they beat Georgia. That's how they outlasted Mississippi State. LSU should have lost both games, as poorly and as off-kilter as they played. But their defense made plays. Their defense kept them in it. Their defense grinded the pace of the game down, and the defense made Georgia's offense earn every yard. They made Mississippi State earn every yard. And when you force teams into long drives, they make mistakes. They stall out. They get offensive coordinators get greedy. I'm guilty of it myself. I get greedy and saying, okay, we got to end this drive right now. I'm going to call a shot play. And that's when your turnovers happen. And that's what LSU does. They're a patient defense. They bait you into that type of stuff, and that's how you kind of beat Alabama. You force them to earn it. Now if they get it and they earn it, great. More power to them. They earned it, but they're going to have to. And I think that's what Alabama's defense has got to play like as well. So it's going to be what can Burrow do? Can he hang in there and make throw after throw after throw after throw? Can Brissett make 2 or 3 tough yards and keep plugging away and not try to get greedy? Can Najee Harris make 3, 4, 5, 6 yards a pop? Where LSU's defense is probably the weakest is inside run. Georgia with Elijah Holyfield showed that, and if Alabama's running game get going, then LSU might be in trouble. So it's going to be from a bunch of different angles, it's going to be a very interesting game. Of course, you look at Alabama's stats, and they're coming in averaging 54.1 points a game. They're averaging 564 total yards a game. Their defense is averaging giving up 307.9 total yards a game, which in this day and age is pretty impressive. They're coming in with all these video game stats, but that doesn't tell really the true story because, honestly, who have they played? Let's be real. They really haven't played legitimate defense yet. And this will be the most legitimate defense they've played to date. And they haven't gotten everybody's best shot. And, that's just the way it is. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Tua because Tua's a phenomenal player, but they just really haven't been challenged yet. So this will be kind of the first time where they have a chance of getting punched in the mouth and getting punched in the mouth hard. So let's see what they can do. For LSU, this is going to be, I know this goes without saying, but it's going to be by far the best team they've played, the most complete team they've played all year long. They got a good warm-up with Georgia. And then they kind of were licking their wounds a little bit against Mississippi State and escaped a sloppy game. But for LSU, they're going to have to grind it down to a nub. For Alabama, score quick, get a quick takeaway. They can take control of this game. So it ought to be interesting from Tiger Stadium, and it's going to be fun.
Josh, what are you looking forward to for this one?
Well, would you guys say that USC has a very good offensive line and is blocking particularly well?
Not this season.
Would you say the team that we like to bury the lead, Arkansas, do you think they're protecting the quarterback very well this year?
They haven't done that in a couple of years.
Yeah.
No.
So the Razorbacks, the men of Troy, have 18 sacks on the season given up. LSU's tied with them.
Oh, wow.
So Joe Burrow, he's got a little bit of some dancing to do because even though Alabama really hasn't played a super sexy schedule yet, you're tied for 7th in the country with 26 sacks already. So that's going to be the battle. And even in LSU's really nice big victory over Georgia, the Bulldogs still had 5 tackles for loss and 3 sacks. So LSU, if they win this game, they have got to find a way. He's going to get hit. He's probably going to get dropped a few times. But they got to at least give it a 2.5 second, if they can, possible pocket. Otherwise, this game's just going to get out of hand, I think.
Yeah, that's what I'd be worried about if I was the Bayou Bengals. I'm going to be rooting for LSU in this one, obviously, because it's nice to see Alabama lose. Quite frankly, it's a little boring to see them just completely dominate.
It doesn't matter. They didn't even win the division last year. They still made the playoffs, so it's a meaningless game in the grand scheme of things.
I suppose. Well, let's move then to the biggest matchup in the Big Ten this weekend. It's taking place in Ann Arbor, Michigan hosting the Nittany Lions. Wolverines have had an extra week to prepare for this one after defeating Little Brother back in Week 8. While Penn State has really not looked terribly great over the past month, they've had a couple wins against Indiana and Iowa, but have not really looked that strong doing so. Josh, can we expect Coach Khaki Pants of that defense to shut down Trace McSorley?
Khakis.
I mean, they've shut down everyone else they've played, and Penn State, they have a phenomenal college quarterback. I don't know what Trace McSorley is going to do at the next level. We've heard it time and again. He's too short, blah, blah, blah. I think New Orleans Saints have a decent quarterback that people said was too short. But he is a phenomenal college quarterback, and he has been just willing his team to victory in some really poor performances. Defense gave up a lot of big plays against Indiana. Iowa, a pick six, special teams debacles all over the field. They could have lost that game as well. McSorley willed them to victory. This is just a different animal with Michigan because you can't do anything to them. Wisconsin couldn't do anything. Michigan State had less than 100 yards. This is by far the best defense in the Big Ten. They are just filled with athletes, filled with, unlike Ohio State, people that are playing 11-man hero ball. These are killer athletes playing schematically sound football. And that's just going to be too grueling because what Penn State lacks this year is their wide receiving group is just a little young right now. And we've seen McSorley kind of not necessarily trust some of the younger players that have had cases of the drops this year. He really has about 2 receivers that he likes. And he seems to lock into them, which led to the pick six for Iowa, for instance. The other thing for Penn State, they graduated their amazing tight end last year, just have not filled that. So there's no real big target mismatch opportunity for a tight end going down the seam or setting up shop in the middle of the field. That's going to cost Penn State the victory. I just don't see them having enough juice in their passing game the way the receiving core hasn't developed, and they lack a tight end right now. So I think Michigan gets it done, especially in the big house. Let's be honest. That's going to be a huge difference maker.
Yeah, Coach, on the flip side of the ball, we've seen Shea Patterson sort of be up and down this season. Do you think he's going to find some success against the Nittany Lions?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's, one of those games where he's due. He has a good running game with Higdon. Higdon is
Higdon's been the star of that offense.
He really has been. And, I think that leaning heavily on the run game is really kind of helped Shea Patterson not do some of the disastrous things that he can tend to do. So I think it's kind of kept him in check. He has a 12-4 ratio of TDs and interceptions. He's right there with McSorley stat wise. He's thrown a few more passes, but I mean, I think there's a lot of holes in this Penn State defense. I just think there's been teams that really just haven't been able to take advantage of them, except for Ohio State and of course, just explosive offenses like that, or I hate to call Ohio State explosive because they're not, but they were explosive that night. But if they can be patient. I think Penn State is going to early on, at least, they're going to force you to drive, and they're going to try to force you into a mistake. And if Michigan can play a clean football game, I think they're going to find themselves in a position where in the end they can start to pull away and really just put it on ice, midway through the fourth quarter and just kind of run out the clock. So I think Michigan's got the talent defensively to make that night miserable for Penn State, or make the afternoon miserable, I should say, for Penn State. They have the running game to control the clock, And if they can get Higdon going on the ground, if they can get him $120, $130 on the ground, I think they're going to be successful because I think it's going to open up things for Gentry in the passing game and really just kind of let Shea Patterson work back there. So I'm excited for this matchup because Penn State really just needs to get over that hump. Michigan, of course, is kind of flexing its muscle, and they're trying to show Ohio State, hey, you know what? Hey, we're coming for you. So I like Michigan in this one. I think Shea Patterson's going to have a big game. I think it's going to be kind of his. If he hasn't really already had that moment, I think he's going to top that and say he's going to have that welcome to the world moment.
Yeah, and Michigan obviously going to be looking for some revenge after what was the score last year, Josh? Like 52-17 or something like that.
Yeah, it wasn't particularly pretty.
No, it was.
These teams have been having like revenge games because 2 years ago Michigan blew out Penn State and all they wanted was revenge. Or maybe it's 3 years ago. I don't know. They've just been having grudge matches.
Yeah, they really have. Well, let's head to another top 10 matchup in the SEC. It's happening in all places. Lexington, Kentucky. Coach, how are your Dogs going to game plan for Josh Allen and the rest of that exceptional Wildcat defense that you mentioned in their victory over Missouri last week?
Well, they're going to have to try to figure out a way to start better, start faster. And I don't get the way they game plan. And I know you keep hearing me say tempo, but in the world of Jake Fromm, that's how he operates. I texted a buddy of mine last week, right when they got the ball back like a minute to go in the first half. I said, watch. And this was on the heels of 4 straight 3-and-outs for Georgia. And it looked like Florida was kind of starting to take control of the game. I go, watch this. We're gonna scream 75 yards down the field, and we're going to score some points because we're going to go tempo. And you know what happened? They went tempo.
Down. Yep.
We went almost 75 down, and we kicked the field goal and got points. So I didn't say we were going to score a touchdown. I said we're going to get points. And we talked about the questionable coaching decision on whether or not to go for it. That's neither here nor there. But anyway, so what Jake Fromm was able to do was it took a lot of the thinking out of it for him. He went tempo. He was able to find receivers all over the place. He was able to find his tight end for most of that series. And they moved the ball like they were moving on air. Like Florida's defense was completely irrelevant. And I think that's kind of what you got to do against these strong defenses. You got to keep them off balance. And I think if they can, if they can go more tempo, you can still have a power running game out of your tempo set because they displayed that in the second half. With DeAndre Swift and Elijah Holyfield got rolling, they were still going tempo. They were just calling run plays. And I think Jim Chaney kind of, hopefully, for my sake and for my sanity's sake, that he figured out that, hey, we can call plays really fast and we can run. Light bulb. They've got to establish a run, obviously. They've got to establish that they're not scared to run right at Kentucky. But they're going to have to get a little bit more creative because it's still patchwork on the offensive line. They've still got guys that are beat up, banged up, and inexperienced and things like that. So they got to figure out a way to plan around that. And I think one of the things you have to do is you have to throw the ball more. You have to just say, you know what, our identity now is we're a tempo power team. We're a power tempo team, and that's okay. You can do that. You can be successful and Jake Fromm throw over 30 passes. You have to find a way to incorporate Justin Fields into this game. I know this is an endless debate. It's not really. I'm not really saying that as Jake Fromm is bad and they should create some sort of quarterback controversy, but he needs to get involved a little bit just to provide a spark, just to provide something different. Maybe like a 10-play package for him. If things get kind of stalled because Kentucky does have a good defense, maybe he's the one that comes in and loosens them up. Who knows? But they've got to get creative because they can't just sit there and drive the ball down people's throats because they're not experienced enough on the offensive line to do so. So for Kentucky, What do they have to do? Well, they have to find a passing game. They are horrendous in the passing game.
Terry Wilson's definitely taken a couple steps back in the past few weeks.
Exactly, and if I'm impressed that they've gotten this far with such a one-dimensional offense, and with the beating that Benny Snell is taking, at some point you have to think it's going to take its toll. Maybe it's this week, maybe not. I don't know. I mean, but they're going to run it 30 times with Benny Snell. They're going to get about 10 to 15 carries with their quarterback, Terry Wilson. He's pretty good on the ground. But if they can, for Georgia's defense, it's pretty simple game plan. Win first and second down. Get them in third and longs. Get them in, get them behind the chains. Win first and second down. You don't have to do anything extraordinary. Just win first and second down. Win field position. Control the clock. Hit Benny Snell. Stuff him. Gang tackle him. You're not going to really force any fumbles from him. You don't really. He does a good job taking care of the ball.
Yeah,
but
he's not Jonathan Taylor.
He's not Jonathan Taylor tailback. He does a good job of taking care of the ball. He obviously does some ball security drills at some point. But you just got to stack him up. You've got to gang tackle. You've got to you just got to get halves to the ball. You've got to have guys flying around. You've got to play against the run as you did in the second half of the Florida game. You've got to that Georgia defense has got to show up. All right, not the one against Missouri that let up all kind of runs up the middle, and not the one that showed up in LSU where LSU pretty much had their way. Not the defense that showed up, for the first couple series against Vandy. I want the defense that showed up at South Carolina. I want the defense that came out of the locker room from halftime in Jacksonville, where Florida couldn't do anything. And Florida has a pretty solid run game. Florida and Kentucky are built very similarly in their schemes, but Kentucky's just well coached and got more veteran players. So this will be a good one. Josh is probably going to say I'm giving Kentucky way too much credit, but that defense scares the crap out of me. But if Georgia plays Georgia football, then it really probably shouldn't.
Well, Josh, is Coach giving Kentucky too much credit?
Well, they can't pass, and Coach highlighted that, and that's going to be a big issue for Kentucky. But what I would say might scare Coach, actually. Kind of looking at this Kentucky team, they're having a breakthrough season. It's by far their best season in quite a long time. And, they're sitting there at first in the country in points against. Back in 2002, when Iowa had their breakthrough season, they were 7th in the country in points, or 24th, in points against. The difference is Iowa was 7th in points for that year. So Iowa had the better offense. But the shades are similar in that Iowa was a team that Big Ten prognosticators were saying, if it all breaks their way, and if this Brad Banks kid is any good, this team might get an upset or two. And Iowa wins some early games, but it's against lower competition. No one really cares. And then they lost to Iowa State. And everyone's like, okay, same old Hawks. Kentucky, a little bit of a similar situation in that they beat Central Michigan. No one really cared. They beat Florida, and the story most of that week was, oh, isn't that cute? Kentucky beat the worst Florida team in a decade. Florida's turned out to be pretty good. But that's what we were saying a few weeks ago. When they lost to Texas A&M, everyone was kind of like, okay, same old story. We don't have to worry about these Kentucky Wildcats. Iowa got really hot. They won some games. They headed to Michigan, ranked 13th, but Michigan was 8th, and everyone was like, okay, this is finally the end of the line of this stupid Iowa team. We don't have to worry about them. Iowa was kind of playing with house money. They were the loose team. They were the team without national title hopes. They threw in some wrinkles. They won 34-9. I think helping it in hindsight was Michigan the following week had their big rivalry game against Michigan State. Well, this year, Georgia, don't they have a much bigger game next week usually when they play Auburn? Isn't that a little bit bigger stakes? So maybe, yes.
But not this year.
But
all the marbles in Georgia knows what state can.
Well, but sometimes it's hard to realize it's for all the marbles when the name on the jersey says Kentucky, and you're so used to blowing them out. So I see kind of some echoes from Iowa's breakthrough season in 2002 and this Kentucky breakthrough season this year.
Are we going to wake up the echoes, Josh?
I don't know. I'm not saying there's going to be 34-9 Kentucky. I'm just saying we like to write off breakthrough seasons, and it's only when you go, holy crap, Kentucky's playing in the SEC title game, or holy crap, Kentucky's playing in the Sugar Bowl, that people then go, oh wow, they were actually good all year. I think we're in this stage where we're kind of nitpicking everything Kentucky does to rationalize not having Kentucky as a top 10 team. So maybe they play with house money. Maybe they throw in some new wrinkles. Maybe they're not. Maybe they sort of figure, we're probably not going to be able to win a national title because we just don't have that prestige. And Georgia's just has more on the line. And maybe that allows Kentucky to play loose. We'll see.
We will see.
Hey, breaking news. Your Hawkeyes, Josh, just picked up a commitment for 2020.
Nice.
Hashtag Swarm20 is the campaign.
Love it.
So that'd be Isaiah Bruce from Lena Winslow High School in Illinois.
All right.
Okay. Well, in other breaking news, Central Florida, they pitched another second half dandy defensively, holding the Owls to just 6 points.
Oh, Nelly, it's
en route to a 52-40 win. They are currently my second-ranked team in my poll.
And yet they will still get no shot at the playoff.
Playoffs?
Hey, Matt, one of the kids that we played against at Columbia Central to start the season, you know that really good defensive end?
Mm-hmm.
He just got offered by Louisville.
So if he wants to go lose games, he can go to Louisville.
Yeah, but his choices right now are Louisville and Toledo.
Ooh.
I might go with Toledo. Anyway, let's head over to the Big 12, where the matchup of the weekend is going down in Austin, where the Longhorns coming off.
I mean, Matt, in that case, you got to go with the school that has a more rigorous academic curriculum, one that diploma is going to matter a lot more. And that's also Toledo.
Yeah, it is. So, yeah. Anyhow, like I was saying, biggest game of the weekend in the Big 12 going down in Austin. Longhorns, coming off of their disappointing loss at Oklahoma State last week, look to bounce back against Will Grier in West Virginia. What? Josh, Mountaineers had 2 weeks to prepare for Baylor last week after their loss to Iowa State 3 weeks ago, and it showed. They put up 58 against the Bears. So do you think they're going to have a repeat performance against Todd Orlando's defense?
Not Bears.
I think so, too, because, look, Iowa State is a phenomenal defensive team. And it was coming before the bye. It was on the road. Ames is not fun to play at. We talked about how that had all the markings of an upset, and it happened. And then West Virginia used the week to get a little healthier, get back into an offensive groove. They got a nice tune-up against a struggling Baylor team. And everyone, like I said for our recap show earlier in the week, everyone's been talking about, Texas and Todd Orlando's defense. Rah, rah, rah. Yeah, they're 53rd in points against. They're giving up 25 points per game. And outside of Oklahoma, they really haven't played too many offensive juggernauts. So it's a little disconcerting that they're still at that high a level of points allowed. I think West Virginia slices and dices them, and the Will Grier Heisman train I know he's still pretty far behind Tua and stuff, but I think that hype train continues for another week.
It's back out of the station?
Yeah.
Coach, are you getting on the Will Grier Heisman train as well for this weekend?
Yes, I am, because I think, honestly, Texas kind of showed their true colors last week against Oklahoma State. I think it was one of those games where, Oklahoma State could pretty much score. I felt like could score when they wanted to, and they were doing it with big plays. And that's kind of how West Virginia rolls. They kind of live and die by the big play. And even though Oklahoma State let them back in the ball game, because Oklahoma State, one of their own faults is they can't stand prosperity, so they're going to let you back in the game. They eventually won it, but they couldn't stand prosperity for very long until Texas just said, "Here, take this game, please, please. We don't want it. Take it." So I think West Virginia is not going to be so generous. They're rolling right now. They're feeling good about themselves. Will Grier is hotter, as they say here in the South, hotter than firecracker July. And
I believe they pronounce it July.
July, right there, boy. So, I think the bye week, if a bye week was ever going to ignite a team, I think for the Mountaineers it has done just that. I think it's kind of woken them up a little bit. I think it allowed them some time to kind of fix some things. Like you said, get some guys healthy, get a back in rhythm. Sometimes you just need to step back for a week and say, okay, we just need to get back in rhythm. Let's get back to basics. And so if I'm Texas, man, I'm nervous. If I'm Texas, I've got to try to figure out a way to be able to keep up in this track meet and try to be able to score West Virginia and score at the frequency that, they are capable of. And if Texas can kind of keep up that frequency, they might have a chance in outscoring them. But I just don't see that from Texas's offense. And for Texas, honestly, they have to turn this into a sloppy game. The only thing that Texas has going for it right now is they're playing at home in front of Bevo. And, the fans that have to sit behind Bevo and smell his rear end the whole day. It's going to be hot. Ooh, I feel bad for those fans. But, granted, they're playing above their heads still. But I think they're kind of settling into what they are, which is kind of a middle of the pack Big 12 team. They're still a year or two away from, they've been showing a lot of potential. Despite what I think of Tom Herman overall, they are showing some potential. Todd Orlando is a talented coordinator. He just ain't there yet. And West Virginia is going to show him, hey, you still got some learning to do in the Big 12. This ain't the American Conference, big boy. So they're going to show him that. Will Grier is going to have and Will Grier's easily. I think Will Grier, Tua Tagovailoa are two of the best quarterbacks in the country. And I'm sure there's others in that category, but I think Will Grier is as talented as they come. His leadership's phenomenal. His football IQ is phenomenal. He's doing a better job of taking care of the football, something that he struggled with, especially down the stretch a year ago. So I really like the direction of this West Virginia team right now, and hopefully I'm right on my instincts about them, and I'm not coming back and saying, man, I whiffed on that game. Because I feel like I have a pretty good read on West Virginia right now, and they're playing some really good football.
They are. They really are. All right, finally, intriguing non-conference matchup in Evanston as Notre Dame comes to town to play the Big Ten West leading Northwestern Wildcats. Josh, can Pat Fitzgerald crew play spoiler to the undefeated Irish?
They can, and we know a blueprint for them to do it. Northwestern's a lot better than Pittsburgh this year, so I'm not trying to insult Northwestern. I'm just saying – you need to pop in the tape of what Pittsburgh did. Pittsburgh went into South Bend. They had a halftime lead, 7-6. They turned it into a grinder. Notre Dame was just better than them.
A Gruden grinder?
No. But Notre Dame won the second half to escape. They won the game 19-14. But a lot of what Pitt did, Northwestern can do. So one thing Pitt did, they made Notre Dame very, very one-dimensional. They held Notre Dame to 80 rushing yards, 2.1 yards per carry. Matt, doesn't that sound a lot like what Northwestern did to Wisconsin?
It sounds a lot like what Northwestern does to pretty much everyone they play.
Yeah. The other thing Pittsburgh did, they had 2 takeaways and won the turnover battle, +2. That sounds like something Northwestern did to Wisconsin as well.
Mm-hmm.
Getting takeaways. The other thing Pitt did to help try and pull off the upset, big special teams play. 99-yard kick return for a touchdown. So the blueprint's there. You make Notre Dame one-dimensional. They're getting better quarterback play, but they're still a team that really, really needs that balance. You get some takeaways, and you get a score in a non-traditional way, whether it's special teams or a defensive score, something like that. If Northwestern can do that, hell, Pittsburgh almost knocked them out. And like I said, Northwestern's a better team than Pitt.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Coach, how do you feel about this one?
I mean, I think Josh hit the nail on the head on this one. You've got to figure out a way to make Notre Dame one-dimensional. You've got to just Northwestern's just got to play the role of disruptive host because they're hosting the game. So, it's for whatever reason, Ryan Field. See, I got it right this time.
Nice work.
I know, right? Aren't you proud of me?
Coach, I'm always proud of you on a daily basis.
You going to send me a batch of cookies now?
No, your wife makes better cookies than I do, so I'll let her stick with that.
I'll just let her make us a celebratory buffalo chicken dip. But, oh gosh, I know, right?
It's the best, man. It's the best. For those of you who don't know, Corey's wife is an exceptional cook and makes the world's best buffalo chicken dip. I don't know what she puts in it, but that
love. She puts love.
She that's all I've asked for my birthday, Coach, which is 2 weeks from tomorrow, by the way.
Ooh, okay.
And I think we're gonna be celebrating by going to the Vandy Ole Miss game. But
right.
Anyhow, yeah, that's what I want for my birthday. But I'll let you get back to this game.
Yeah. So, so I'm saying playing disruptive host. So what does that mean exactly? Well, Clayton Thorson, whatever you want to call him. I don't know if his friends call him Clay for short, but Clayton Thorson, he's got to get going. He's got to really. I think he's going to have to kind of take this game over and find one of his top targets, Flynn Nagel, Isaiah Bowser. Bowser's Castle. He's going to have to. They're just going to have to get going as an offense. They're just going to have to kind of play above their heads a little bit and just control the clock.
I think we should start calling Ryan Field Bowser's Castle.
I like that.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Sure.
All right. Well, guys, I think we're going along, so it's time to hit some spread formations quick. Last week, not great to us. Josh, you were 1-4, which puts you at 17-31-1 in the season. You are now career. Coach, with your 3-2 week, you pulled ahead of Josh. You are now 18-30-1. Yes. I was also 3-2. I am 22-26-1 against the spread. We will start in the Big Ten. Nebraska is playing at Ohio State, who is coming off of a bye after that loss to Purdue. They are 17.5-point favorites at home. Josh, who are you taking?
Well, Nebraska's played a little bit better, and we've talked about Ohio State giving up the big plays, but I just can't shake this feeling, which is last year when Ohio State was humiliated at Iowa, 55-24. What did they do the following week? They spanked Michigan State 48-3. Refocused Buckeye team blows out Nebraska.
Coach.
Josh, I'm going to steal your answer because you're a smart man. Ohio State's going to come out hungry. They're going to show the world, hey, we ain't dead yet. They're going to blow them out.
Yeah, Ohio State's going to win this one by 30-plus. Nebraska's offense getting a little better. Nebraska's defense still garbage. Next, we have another leg of the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. Army, 6.5-point favorites at home against Air Force. Josh, who are you taking?
Yeah, Air Force just is having a down season. They are 3-5, haven't looked good against good offensive teams. Utah State, for instance, got the better of them. FAU got the better of them. Boise State got the better of them. And they haven't looked good against rushing-oriented teams because, like, hey, San Diego State got the better of them. I've got Army ranked 24th in my poll for a reason. Give me Army to cover at home.
All right, Coach.
Well, I mean, I have to agree with them. Even though Air Force has played good at times, and they made several good plays against Boise State a week ago, I still don't trust them. I don't trust them traveling across the country. So give me the Black Knights at 6.5.
All right. I'm also taking Army in this one. It's one thing to prepare for a team like Air Force if you are not used to seeing the triple option, but Army sees that every day in practice. I think Army's just a better team at this point, plus the home field advantage. Give me the United States Military Academy. Next, back over to the Big 12, Oklahoma State coming off of their big win against Texas last week. They are 7.5-point favorites on the road at Baylor. Josh, what side are you on?
Yeah, Matt Rule's rebuild's kind of going as expected. They were truly awful last year, marginally improved this year. That defense is still a wreck, 106th in the country right now in points against. That's not good when you're facing a reinvigorated Oklahoma State team coming off that big upset win. I got the Pokes, and for the love of God, I hope they're in their throwbacks the rest of the time. Those things were beautiful a week ago.
Those were absolutely gorgeous. Coach, who are you taking?
Man, you guys are either the world is coming to an end because we're all agreeing on every pick, or you guys just stole my notes because I like the Pokes here. Pokes really impressed me a lot last week. They've really kind of bounced back. They were struggling for the better part of the year. And Texas, they just woke up, man.
They did, but I'm actually going with Baylor in this one. I think this is a letdown spot for Oklahoma State. Riding a high off of that big win against Texas, they got Bedlam next week. I think that Oklahoma State wins by a field goal in a surprisingly close game in Waco. All right. Next, we have our first of two terrible teams of the week that we always pick. This time it's Rutgers on the road at Wisconsin. Badgers coming off that loss to Northwestern last week. 30-point favorites at home, and Alex Hornibrook looks like he's going to be back in the starting lineup, Josh. Who are you taking?
Well, I was thinking about making a joke and saying, can Wisconsin even score 30 points in a game? But
I don't know.
But the fact of the matter is, they would have covered a spread this big against Western Kentucky. They would have covered the spread this big against New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
They came close to covering a spread this big against Nebraska, who's a lot better than Rutgers. And they beat Illinois, who's way better than Rutgers because Illinois spanked Rutgers by 29. So despite the spread being super big and despite Wisconsin maybe looking past Penn State, and also despite the fact that Rutgers has reached the point where they're so bad you lull you asleep, and that's, I think, what happened to Northwestern in their narrow 18-15 win. Despite all that, I kept the Badgers in my poll for a reason. I think they figure some things out and just smoke the hapless Knights.
Coach.
See, I think they're going to be asleep at the wheel. I think Hornibrook is going to have – I think it's kind of starting to get to the point where they either lose or win ugly. And, you know, Hornibrook's going to have these just atrocious-looking stat lines where he's like –
he's throwing 2 picks in this game.
14 of 27 – 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, like 1 carry for 3 yards and a touchdown. And then Jonathan Taylor, tailback, he's going to have like 120 yards. And they're going to hit the 4-minute drill to seal the game to beat Rutgers by like 6 points. So I think it's going to be one of those type games for Wisconsin all year long. And I just don't think Wisconsin has it in them to cover the 30-point spread. I don't think they're going to blow them out at all. I think they're gonna fall asleep in this one.
Since they joined the Big Ten, Josh, do you know what the average margin of victory for Wisconsin over Rutgers is?
58.
It's 37.5. That being said, Wisconsin is going to be missing this weekend Olive Sagapolu, who is their only serviceable nose tackle. So they're starting a true freshman, Bryson Williams, who's been okay this season. Not that Rutgers' offensive line is anything to write home about, but still, I don't like that. Wisconsin's defensive line is so banged up. They're also missing starting safety Scott Nelson and their best left tackle in Cole Van Lanen. So I think Wisconsin wins by 28. So give me Rutgers to cover. Finally, time to pick the Kansas line. Iowa State, only 14.5-point favorites at the track, Josh. Which way are you going?
Well, I've got Iowa State in my poll. They are 3-0, and what a doozy for this 3-game winning streak at Oklahoma State, West Virginia, and Texas Tech. So I'm sure somewhere out there is thinking, yeah, but they're playing Kansas. That's a letdown game. How do you stay so high emotionally after such big wins? And I would say, easy. Look at last year. They won at Oklahoma. Iowa State's very next game was against Kansas. They beat them 45-0. The Cyclo team is no joke. They cover this spread easily.
Coach.
Yeah, I think this is a cakewalk. Iowa State's playing some phenomenal football. Matt Campbell has got them just rolling. And they're feeling good about themselves, and it continues here, track or no track.
All right. Yeah, I'm also taking the Cyclones here. Iowa State still has a chance to make the Big 12 title game, guys. And would not surprise me if they do just that. I think, that they have a chance to run the table for the rest of the season before the Big 12 title game. Well, actually, I take that back. Have they played Oklahoma yet? I can't remember.
They did. They lost narrowly. It was a really tight battle. I think they lost by 10.
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, give me Iowa State. I think they're the second best team in the Big 12. So I will take them here. So I think that's going to do it, Josh. And I was going to say, I think we buried the lead. I don't know if the newspaper's printing this weekend.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the lovable Razorbacks, they are off, which is actually a really good thing because their next opponent is LSU. So they'll get to watch Alabama, see what Alabama does against LSU. And with some of those just like next level, out of this world talent that Arkansas has on both sides of the ball, as well as just some brilliant coaching, I guess as they pop in that tape and just recreate everything Alabama did to win in a week.
All right. Coach, any final words from you?
Yeah, let's go Toppers.
Yeah, Coach, first round of the playoffs this weekend. Who you guys got?
We've got the Page Patriots. They're 9-1. Honestly, I in watching film and now I've seen every team from their region. I don't think they're the best team in the region, even though they finished that way. They just honestly found a way to win against a superior team in Shelbyville Central, and I think we got the better matchup of the 3 and 4 seed kind of stacked up. I think Gallatin probably got the worst matchup of the region where they had to play against Shelbyville, and so I like our chances if we can keep our composure and. If we can do what we do, I think we'll be just fine. And we have got to be able to sustain a drive without shooting ourselves in the foot, both offense and defense. And we've got to really, not only do we got to force them to earn it, but they're going to force us to do the same thing. And we've got to be willing to take the short stuff. And I think sometimes Hale gets greedy and wants to throw deep, but if we can just take the short stuff, and be patient, we will find that we will rack up the yards. And in all the games that we have, which is just about every single game, the drives that stall are the ones that end up being deep ball. And the ones that don't are the ones that end up, you complete a pass 6 yards, he runs for 12. Complete a pass at the line of scrimmage, he runs for 6, 8. And bam, he's out the door. Those have been the kind of drives that we score on. So it'll be interesting to see how our kids respond and see how they respond to playing such a good game last week against Beach. So it's neither here nor there. So.
Well, Coach, all of us here at Illegal Motion Nation will be rooting for Topper Nation this weekend. I should say Friday night. So we'll be thinking about you, Coach, and we hope that all of you out there have a wonderful, wonderful weekend of college and high school football. We're finally in the double digits, week 10. So, make sure you're planning on your couch all day Saturday, especially Saturday night for Bama LSU. We got some good warm-ups before that. So, with that, I'm going to say on behalf of our own offensive coordinator, the coach, Corey Burton, and here in Nashville, Tennessee, and our intrepid blogger from Big Ten and Counting, Josh Cook, up there in Chicago, Illinois, this is the professor in the Music City saying so long and see you next time on the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast.
Woo! Pig suey.
On a bye.
On a bye.
Thanks for listening to the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast. To get in touch with the show, email us at illegalmotionpodcast@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter at illegal_motion.